I guess you love movies. I do too. Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about my 5 favourite horror films of all time. You may be wondering why I'm not doing a top 10 list or even more. Well, that's mainly because I only really got into watching horror films a year or so ago. Before then, it wasn't really a genre I was interested in exploring, but I thought as Halloween came around last year, I should look into some of the horror classics and see if I like any of them. And since then I've watched a few more horror films, and these are my 5 favourite horror films of all time. So, at number 5 we're going to start with a classic film from 1968, and that is Rosemary's Baby. And Rosemary's Baby is one of my favourite horror films, mainly because it's unlike horror films nowadays. It doesn't try and jump scare you into submission, where everything is popping out of different places constantly for like 90 minutes, and by the time you're a nervous wreck because you're constantly expecting someone to jump out of some cupboard. The movie builds to a brilliant climax. You feel this unease through the entire film, and you can't really put your finger on it, but you understand that something is going on here and something is wrong, and that's what I love about the film. It doesn't try and scare you as much as it unnerves you and gets under your skin, and you can feel that there's something wrong in this film and something isn't quite as it seems. Mia Farrow is fantastic in the movie as well, and Roman Polanski directs this film very, very well. Roman Polanski also directed Chinatown, which of course is a fantastic film as well. Nothing like Rosemary's Baby at all, which shows the versatility of Polanski. And I do want to watch some of his other films. Apparently, Repulsion, which was it was his first American film, is apparently very good as well. So that's another film to check out. And number 4 on my list is The Exorcist. The Exorcist, directed by William Friedkin, starring Ellen Bernstein, who is fantastic in this movie. Mainly thought of as the scariest movie ever made. It still holds up to this day. It's still incredibly creepy, incredibly disgusting in parts. Excellent film. Good performances all around from Lee J. Cobb as well, and Max von Sydow in the film. Very, very enjoyable film. If you can say The Exorcist is enjoyable. As a horror film, it's fantastic. I wouldn't call it enjoyable because I think we all know about that. If you've seen The Exorcist, that crucifix scene, that's not enjoyable. That's quite fucked up, but it's good. Okay, moving on to my next film. Is The Babadook. So that's a newer film, came out a few years ago, Australian film, directed by Jennifer Kent and stars Essie Davis. And The Babadook is another one of those films that's just incredibly unnerving. As it moves along throughout the film, you feel this unease, and it is truly one of the best horror movies of recent years. It's got a great child performance. And as I said, Essie Davis is absolutely fantastic in this movie. The way she slowly goes insane, and really the horror of this film isn't a monster, it's mental illness, and that is truly a real life horror that for me is way scarier than any monster or slasher. Moving on to slashers, my second favourite horror film of all time is John Carpenter's Halloween. Now, perfect title for this time of year, and they've made approximately 1 billion sequels to this. Probably could be a bit closer on the number, but it's about 1 billion. They just don't need to make any more movies of Halloween, and the reason why there are so many sequels is because the first one was so good. It's definitely very reminiscent of Psycho, which I haven't included on this list because I don't really class it as a thoroughbred horror. I feel like it's more of a psychological thriller than a horror film. Even though Psycho, if it probably was on this list, would probably be number 1. But I can definitely see the similarities between Psycho and Halloween. This pulsating score throughout the film and theme that really, really gets under your skin, and the suspense builds and builds and builds. And again, there's not a lot of scares. It's really built up the tension and the suspense throughout the film. And when you get to the climax, it doesn't disappoint. There's some brilliant scares in there, and some fantastic direction from John Carpenter, of course, who is probably the king of the slasher. And Mike Myers has gone on to become like an iconic character in movies and in, as I said, a lot of Halloween sequels, but none of them have come close to being as good as the original. So those are 4 of my favourite horror films, and well, I won't keep you in suspense any longer. My number 1 horror film of all time is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. So I watched The Shining along with these horror films that I've mentioned, and I found it to be one of the most truly disturbing and unnerving films you're ever going to see, as well as being truly brilliant filmmaking. Nicholson in this film is iconic. It is one of his best performances. It's really difficult to choose because Nicholson has done so many brilliant performances in his career, but this is maybe his best, and definitely his most unhinged. Shelley Duvall is good in this film. She nearly went insane on set, and she definitely went insane in the movie. There's so many iconic moments in this film. The twins sequence, with Torrance's son on the tricycle, the old lady scene, of course the maze. There's so many things in this movie that are incredibly iconic, as well as the most iconic of all, the Here's Johnny Door scene. And not just the performances and the direction, but the cinematography is fantastic. Kubrick used the same cinematographer for a lot of his films, and again, there's a lot of beautiful shots in this film, as well as it being incredibly disturbing. And it also, there's a lot of questions that are left unanswered in the film, and that allows the film to be even more creepy, because you don't know everything, you don't understand everything. It leaves it to your own interpretation, and that sort of allows the horror to kind of seep into you and sort of be more elongated. It stays with you longer because you're constantly thinking about the questions that it poses. And yeah, The Shining is one of my favourite Kubrick movies as well. Not only one of my favourite horror films, but one of my favourite Kubrick films. I really need to see more Kubrick because I've only seen 4 of his movies, which is 2001, Doctor Strangelove, The Shining, and Spartacus. So I really want to see a lot more Kubrick, but I will get round to it at some point. So there you go, that is my top 5 horror films of all time. What's your top 5 horror films of all time? Drop it down in the comment section below. Are any of your picks the same as mine? What did you think of my picks? Did you think they were ridiculous? Did you think they were great? Whatever you thought, drop that in the comment section below. If you like the video, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, hopefully I'll see you next time. Goodbye.